All right. So we're going to be talking about some application problems. And one of the really important skills that you're going to run into whenever you're doing application problems is translating between literally like words and mathematics. So one of the first things I like to do is we're going to go over we're going to talk about some operations and we're going to talk about keywords. And there is no way I could possibly make an exhaustive list. No matter how long I make a video, there is no way to list all of our possible keywords or combinations of words. English is a very, English is a language with a very large map. But let's do what we can and go over some of our most common ones. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about is things like addition. So I'm going to talk about add. And sometimes you'll hear added to. Another really good one is sum. So add, addition is the operation. Sum is the answer of addition. Sometimes you'll also hear something like more than. Or another one is, of all things, plus. So these are some of our really most basic things. Like I say, we're gonna have a pretty big list of words here by the end. So I hope you've brought your pen and paper. So let's also then talk about subtraction. And of course, we can talk about, subtracting. Subtract. And once again, sum is the answer for addition. The answer for subtraction is a difference. So that's a good one to know. Less than. Or minus. Now, more than and less than also can show up as inequalities. So we have to be a little bit careful as to our context when we're doing some of these. Next, I'm going to do, and I don't usually use this when we're talking in algebra, but for a lot of folks, this is what they think of when they think of multiplication. So multiplication, well, actually I shouldn't have put that line there just yet. I'm going to be crowded because we got a lot of things here. We can talk about multiply. And of course, just like with our, what is the answer to addition? Addition is sum, for subtraction it's difference. We've also got product. I've also heard times. But beyond that, there's a bunch of specialized words for multiplication. And things like double, which of course means 2 times something, or triple, which is 3 times something, or quadruple, which is 4 times something. And like I say, there's no way we could ever go through the whole thing, because I could do quadruple, which is 4 times, quintuple, which is 5 times, sextuple, which is 6 times something, septuple, which is 7 times something, octuple, novuple, decuple. There's a lot of words. But these are going to be our most common ones. One of the things, and I'm not going to list it here because it gets used so often in other places as well, but we can also use the word of will occasionally mean multiply. I will talk about that later as one of our phrases. Now let's do division. Division, I've got, well, divide. Divide or divided by. We've also got, what is the answer for division but a quotient? It always amuses me when I hear people say this for the first time because, and it's okay. Most of the time you might have only heard that might have only seen that in print, but quotient is how that is pronounced. And into is another common, it's another common word that you're going to use for dividing something into. But just like multiplication, we've also got some specialized words. And the first of those is half. Half means you're literally taking a number and dividing it by 2. Third means you're dividing it by 3. It's something over 3. Fourth, fifth, sixth, all of these fraction words are also division words. Now, it's not, so now that. Now, technically, it's not an operation. It's not addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. But I'm also going to throw equality in here. Something is equal, and frequently you're going to see equal or is, equivalent to. These are some good keywords that we're going to run into. And last but not least, we should also talk about our variable. And notice I always try to use a script whenever I'm writing a variable as opposed to the X for multiplication. So a variable, you're going to sometimes run into a number. Or frequently, you're also going to hear this as a question word, like how much, what value. So how much, what value? So you're going to run into these question words, and frequently those are going to be the variables, or sometimes it's going to be something that's less of a question word and more of just a thing that you don't know. So it could be an age or an amount. So it's literally, your variables are determined by your context. Now, outside of this, let's keep going, because this is like I say, it's by far, this is not exhaustive. We've got a lot of other words that we could have on this list, but I think it's more important that we start talking about some of our key phrases. And one of the first phrases I like to bring up is we've got, and it's got 3 parts. So when it comes to our phrases, I've got 3 that I'm going to deal with. And this one is of an and. So with this, you're going to end up with some sort of, you're going to end up with, usually it's a keyword, and it's usually going to be sort of that answer keyword. So words like sum, difference, product, or quotient. Of one object and another object. I'm going to call this object A and object B. And literally that keyword is going to go in between these 2 things. So with this, it's important to note that you're going to keep this order. Now, this is really esoteric, so let's give you some examples. Let's say we've got the difference of a number and 6. So here's our first example here. And let's say, oh, the difference, this means that we're going to be subtracting. A number, this is our variable. 6 is a constant. So this is just going to be a number and 6, and I'm sticking this subtraction right in between them. So literally, not to be crass about it, but the and tells us where to stick it. So I've got n minus 6. Just like that. Let's do it again. I could have division, and this is actually a great one for this. If I just said, the quotient of 12 and a number. This is going to be 12 and a number. I'll use x this time. And quotient tells us we're dividing. So I could do something like this, or because it's division, we could also say 12 over x. It can sometimes happen like that. And remember, fractions, all fractions are division problems anyway. So this is that first, one of our first phrases, or what I refer to as an of and. And it's a, so we've got, so take a look and see if you see that this of and. That's a good one to look out for. Another very important phrase, when we're looking for our phrases, is what I think of as portions. Portion of. And here is something. Portion of something. Frequently what you're going to have here with this portion, you're going to have portion of, and I'll just call this value. So this portion, this could be a percent. And if you do have a percent here, remember to write it as a decimal. Or it could be a fraction. Fractions are also portions. And of course, your value here, this could be a number or a variable. We don't know what we're taking portion of. But here is what this is going to mean, is that of, this is going to actually indicate multiplication. So if I were to say something like, oh, 85% of a number, I would translate this as 0.85, that's a 5, times a number. Or it could do something like 3/4 of 20. Oh, that's going to be 3/4 times 20. Or I could do something like, say I've got, and actually another portion, believe it or not, would be something like, well, actually now let's stick with like fractions. I could say, oh, I could say 1/3 of Kate's age. Here, this is something that we don't know, at least in this case, but I do know that I'm taking 1/3 of that. 1/3 times Kate's age, I'm going to just use K. I always think it's helpful to use meaningful variables. Okay. So yeah, we've also got our portion type of phrase. Last but not least, I think it's also important to talk about what I think of as my reversing phrases. And with a reversing phrase, this is when I have something like some of our key words, remember, were things like more than, less than. So what you're going to have is blank, and you might have something like more than, or you might have less than, or you could have added to, or subtracted from another thing. So let's say this A and B, and with this type of phrase, what we're going to do is we are going to reverse the order of our objects. So with this, we're going to reverse our objects. And I can spell reverse, E-R-S-E, the order of our objects. So if I were to say 5 less than double a number, I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to start with this double a number. Oh, it's going to be double a number. Oh, that's going to be like 2x. Less than says I'm subtracting. And what am I subtracting from it? 5. Just like that. 5 less than says, oh, it's going to be minus 5, whatever I'm doing. If I were to say something like, say I had 12 subtracted from, a value. Okay, I've got a value and I'm subtracting 12. So even though 12 shows up first here, it's going to be the last thing. I am subtracting 12 from this value. Well, v minus 12. So this will hopefully give you a good idea of where to get started when you're translating some of your words and phrases into some algebraic things. Alrighty, I will catch you in the next video.